a little piece here on this corner and a little piece on this corner. For me, these two are the same size, and they're going to be whatever is left over from this middle piece I cut out. So again, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab we're going to create a sketch. So create a sketch, and we're going to create the sketch on the leg's face, the top of it. So we're going to click right there. I'm going to grab a rectangle. I'm going to make sure it snaps to that area. See how I get an X there? I want that X. And then I'm going to create it down and click OK. And now I'm going to dimension this. So I'm going to hit D. I'm going to say, okay, how big is this? And this is going to be the depth of that tab on the back. I measured mine and it's 2.2 centimeters. Yours is probably different. And then the width of it, I measured it to be, mine is going to be 5 centimeters. I'm going to click enter there. Now notice how messed up that is. That's like way off on one side. So again, I'm going to use the centering tool, so the midpoint tool. I'm going to click here. I'm going to click on this shorter line here, and then I'm going to click on the long line behind, and that's going to center the two of them up. And that's going to give me my wide tab for the back. Now the difference is, unlike down here where I cut the middle out, I actually want to cut the edges. These two sides are cut away and this is left behind. So I need to still draw a rectangle around the parts I'm going to cut. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to grab a rectangle tool. I'm going to go down here to the corner where I get that square. I'm snapping to that corner. And I'm going to come up to this corner. I get that square. I snap to that corner. It just made a rectangle. Same thing on this side. Corner to corner. And now I'm going to extrude. So I hit E, and I come over here and I say, okay, what parts do I want to cut away? And it's this part, and it's this part, but not the middle part. And then I'm going to click E for extrude, and I'm going to rotate it around so I can kind of see which direction it's going. Notice it's wanting to go up, so I'm going to say, nope, let's go down and cut. I've gotten through the edge here, so I've cut away the piece, and all I have to do now is say, okay. And I just cut it away. I'm going to go back to top and rotate it around this way. Now, I've done a lot of work. We've built in the leg and we have all the pieces to the leg, which is really awesome. Next thing I'm going to do is just click the home button, rotate it back around, zoom it out a little bit, and I'm going to go back here and say, show me the back. So now the back is there. We can start seeing the look that we're going for. Okay. Now, notice something kind of weird here. I'm going to show you a really awesome tool that you'll use a bunch. It's called the Move tool. And you get the Move tool with the letter M. So just press M. It's going to ask you over here, it's going to say, what object do you want to move? So I'm going to click on this object right here. And I'm going to grab one of these arrows. And I'm just going to slide it out of the way. Notice when I do that, the back is still a solid piece of material. Like if you tried to cut this out on the laser, you wouldn't get a very good outcome because it'd be solid. You wouldn't be able to stick it into it like this. So the next thing we need to do is be able to figure out how to get this to fit into that perfectly. Now because I've moved it out of the way, it's going to be really hard to get it just back. So instead of saying OK here, I just click cancel and it goes back to where it wanted to go. Now when I do this, if I grab the up arrow and I drag it, it'll just drag straight up and down. If I grab the left-right arrow, it'll go left and right. If I grab this little thing in the middle, this little circle in the middle here, it gets really weird. It goes up, down, left, and right. It's really hard to control where it is and get it all lined back up. So if I do get it all mixed up and moved in the wrong place, all I have to do is hit cancel and it goes right back to where I started from. So that's a good way to see what's happening, is just to move it out of the way, hit cancel, and it'll snap back to where it was. Now, making the holes here. We could hide the leg, and we could line up and try and cut a hole here that matches the leg perfectly. But there's an even easier way in Fusion 360. It's called the Combine tool, which is weird because we're actually cutting with it, but we're going to use what's called the Combine tool. So it's under Modify and Combine, or it might be up in your menu already. So click on the Combine tool. it's going to ask you the target body. So in this case, that's the thing that we're going to want to cut. And we're going to try and cut holes in the back. So we're going to click on the back as our target body. It's a thing we're shooting through. And it's going to ask us the tool body. So that's basically what's going to be doing the cutting. And that's going to be our leg. We're going to have it cut. Then it's going to say, what do you want to do? And here it says join. What that's going to do is it's going to make this into one piece, which our laser cutter can't cut this in one piece. It's got to cut it in two pieces. So instead of join, we're going to say, no, we want to cut it. It turns our tool piece into red. And notice how it's showing that it cut through. It cut these two little notches into our back, perfectly in there. Now, if we click OK right now, it's going to do that cut and then delete the red part forever. And we won't have it back. So instead of that, we're going to say, hey, you know what? We want to keep the tool when we're done. This is our tool. We're going to cut with it, and then we're going to keep it at the end. And then just click OK. Give it a second or two to do that math. And now it's cut through. So if I click on M to move, and I click here, and then I move this out of the way, notice now I've cut slots that exactly match the size of the leg I made. So I made the tabs here, and then I used the combine tool to cut slots for them that exactly match. Again, I'm going to hit cancel so I know that I'm back in the right place, and everything is happy. Now the one last thing we need to do is we need to cut that slot into the back of our case here. So to do that, we're going to hide the leg just to get it out of the way so it's not distracting us. And we're going to go over here and do create a sketch. And we're going to create a sketch on the face of the back piece. And we're going to come up here and we're going to grab a rectangle and we're going to draw that rectangle right across here. Actually, let's not do that. I'm going to click here and I'm going to go Control Z to undo. Whenever you do something you don't want to do, Control Z will get you out of it. So instead of that, let's actually do a construction line first so that we can line it up with the side that we want to line it up on. So I'm going to click on line here. I'm going to come over here and say, okay, I want a construction line. I'm going to click somewhere on the top. It goes to an X so I know I'm snapped onto the edge, and then all the way down to the bottom, keeping that a nice 90-degree angle there, and I'm going to click when I get down there. I have my construction line. Now I need to tell it how far from the edge. Yours might be on the left side. The one I'm designing is on the right side, so just be cognizant of that. So to do that, I'm going to hit the D for dimensioning tool. Notice I get my left-right arrow. I'm going to click on the construction line and the side, and then I'm going to drag up to put my value up here of what it's going to be. And on mine ends up being 1.75 centimeters. Yours will be different. Make sure you measure it and get it in the right place. Actually, I'm going to take mine up to 2.1 centimeters. So to change it, all I have to do is double click on it. It'll show me that box again, 2.1, and it will adjust it. Actually, I'm gonna go with the 1.75. Sorry, I'm being indecisive. So that's where I'm gonna make my mark right there. And now I want to go back to my good friend, the rectangle tool, and I'm gonna cut a rectangular hole in here. I'm gonna just draw a rectangle. It doesn't matter what size I draw it. I'm gonna size it in just a second. And notice I just made a mistake. So I made it, see the dashed lines mean it's a construction line thing, so I can't use that. I need to just Control Z. I'll undo that real quick. And then I'll come over here, turn off my construction lines, and then go back up to the rectangle. Click and drag down. Who cares what size it is? I'm going to dimension this. So I'll hit the D button to add dimensions. And I'm going to click on this. I'm going to zoom in first. I'm going to click on this edge. Click on this edge, drag up here and say, okay, I want that to be 0.3 because it's going to be the thickness of the material that we're using. And then I'm going to come on this side, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on this one, on this line. I'm going to just drag out to here. And I'm going to say this should be the same width as my leg dimension, which I want to say is 5 centimeters. Okay. Make sure this dimension is the same width as that back part of the leg. And then notice that it's not kind of where I want it to be. I want mine to be right in the center of the back. And it's a little high right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the centering tool, the midpoint tool. So I'm going to click midpoint here. I'm going to click the short line first, and then my long construction line second, and it just centered it right in the middle of my box. So now everything looks pretty solid. I'm a little concerned about this small piece. If it was any smaller, I definitely want to change it, but that looks like that might be okay. Now I need to just extrude it. So I'm going to hit the E button for extrude. I'm going to rotate around so I can see which way. I'm going to first actually select the thing I want to extrude. I'm going to rotate it around so I can see which way it's extruding. I know this doesn't feel right. I'm going to just click this one. Okay, so instead of extruding forward and making an object, I'm going to extrude backwards, and I'm going to poke it right out the back of it. If I rotate around, I can see, okay, there's a nice hole there now. And I'm just going to say, okay. Give it a second to do the math, and it just sliced a hole right through the back of my design. Come back over here, I'm going to turn the leg back on, and now go back to home. I have a iPhone stand that's ready to rock and roll. So this is ready to cut. I've got two components, a leg component, a back component, and in the next video we'll talk about how to take this from Fusion 360 and, oh, actually wait, I want to ease up some of these corners. Some of the corners in the leg here are really hard corners. I don't want a big curve like this. I want a smaller curve. So once you have it already formed into a solid, we made these, remember, in the sketch mode before we extruded. You can do it after you extrude as well. Let's look at how to do that. So I'm going to hide the leg. And I'm going to come up here to my modify, and I'm going to choose fillet, which is a rounding over command. And here's this new menu pops up here, and I'm going to click on all the things I want to fillet. So I'm going to click, and what I want to fillet, if I do this one, check this out. It actually rounds over this whole edge. Now I can't round that edge over in the laser cutter. It can only cut straight down. I need to round other corners. So this one I'm just going to say, hey, that wasn't the right edge. I'm going to hit X to kill that edge. And I'm actually going to zoom in, and I want to round over this edge. And when I pull this in, notice how it gives me a nice round over here. And really, that's about all I want. Just like a 0.15 centimeters, something really small. So I'm going to move on to the next edge. I'm going to say, okay, I want this edge to be rounded over as well. And I'm just going to rotate it a little bit so I can see that edge. I want this edge rounded over. It doesn't want to grab another one. I want this edge. I want this edge. Why is it not working with me? Okay, so now I've got two. Now it's working. I've got two edges. I want to round over this edge. I'm not going to round over these inside edges. I want them to be nice and square edges to fit firmly against the back of the case or the back of the stand. I want to wrap all these outside corners. I'm going to rotate around. Just keep grabbing outside corners. Outside corner. That's an inside one. Leave it alone. Outside corner. Outside corner, outside corner, and just to make sure, I'm going to click the top here. I'm going to zoom out so I can see the whole piece, move it to the middle. I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 outside corners, and notice I have 8 edges here that I'm going to round. And now it's just a matter of rounding them to getting an amount that I like. I like that 0.15 that we saw earlier, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to just type in 1.5 there. And I like how just a tiny bit of round over there is there. That's really nice. That way, if this is in my pocket, these corners don't stab me in the leg all the time. So I'm going to appreciate that later if I go ahead and do this. And we're going to just click OK. And now we've done that feature. We've got this nice rounded over thing. Let's click back to home. And let's add our back in. Click home again. It'll zoom